We are de-risking entrepreneurship. There are a lot of people out there that would make great entrepreneurs, or frankly have already been a great entrepreneur and have gone back to the corporate world.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey there. Welcome to the Small Business Black Holes podcast with Alan Pence, where we help you navigate today's chaos with precision. Your host, Alan Pence, has 25 years of experience working in business and government, and he knows how the old rules have fallen apart. Each episode, we'll explore how to thrive in this new landscape by mastering the small business black holes while everyone else is still figuring them out. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Small Business Black Holes podcast. We have John Giorso, and he is with VantaFive. It's a venture studio, largely for marketing-based companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us a little bit about it. Like a venture studio sounds very cool
Yeah.
in California. You live out in the Sunshine State or the Golden State, right? So it's that's well, you have to have a venture studio or a venture capital company.
I'm mostly just trying to sound cool. So the venture studio is basically an effort to launch multiple niche-focused marketing services businesses. So agencies. My background is an agency that I built, up to 8 figures and sold. I kind of miss doing that, and I had a bunch of different ideas. And my co-founder and I started this thing. I think it's funny, it's not a perfect kind of start, but I think in earnest, we started it maybe 9 months ago. We have 2 businesses up and running. I'm in the process of kicking off a third. And then I think from there, our goal is going to be to launch another one every 3 to 6 months. So every quarter on the more ambitious side, although we'll see if that's actually possible and sustainable. But so far, we're kind of on track to do that.
Give us an idea of some of the what they do.
Yeah. So the first 2 that are up and running, the first one is a full service LinkedIn agency. So they work with B2B companies to basically maximize the upside of the platform. So they do content, they do paid media, they do, messaging and connections and influencer, but all really specifically catered to work on the LinkedIn platform. So basically a platform play. That business is going, very well. It's been around for a decent amount of time. It was actually started by my co-founder. So it's been around 2 years. The second business is a company called Longbow. It builds AI-driven outbound systems. So the best way to think about this is we replicate what has historically been done by BDR and SDR teams with marketing. So with AI-driven marketing and automation. That business has been around for about 3 months. It's also going well, obviously kind of early days, but I think there's a lot of demand and the service is resonating with clients. And then the next business I'm kind of heads down in the process of kind of ideating, recruiting, and launching is a business that does not have a name yet, but it's going to be a TikTok shop and social commerce agency. So obviously more kind of consumer focused commerce play. There's other ideas from there, but I'll take a breath.
Yeah, excellent. That's really cool. So I definitely want to get into your, how all those things would work for small business. Cause we were talking right before, just how overwhelming the field of marketing is for a small business. So I want to dive in, but first just the operations of the studio. So how can you get enough people to run these things? Cause that's always been the problem I have is there's just a scarcity of entrepreneurial talent that could actually operate, a company and make it run. So how do you guys deal with that?
So we're 2 for 2. So I feel really good about the first 2 CEOs. I'm in the process of recruiting for the third CEO, and we have some really impressive people that I'm excited about. I mean, nothing's been done yet, a little bit confidential, right? I'm in the middle of that, so I won't say too much about it, but I'm very optimistic about that one. We are de-risking entrepreneurship. There are a lot of people out there that would make great entrepreneurs, or frankly have already in some cases been a great entrepreneur and have, gone back to the corporate world. And they're just not in a position where they can just, not have a salary for a year and risk the entire sort of financial future of their family on an idea, right? It's easy when you're 23 to say, oh, you just need to hustle and do it and whatever, take risks. Sure. Right. But like, if you're not, and you have people that depend on you and a household burn and all that stuff, like you may have all the right DNA, the experience, the connections, the mindset. You may have all those things, but there's just no vehicle to sort of really capitalize on that upside. So, in part, and this is not philanthropic, right? Like we benefit as well from this. The goal is to win. The goal is to win with winners, but give them kind of a path to build services business in a way that de-risks entrepreneurship for them and gets out of the cold start problem for us. Meaning, a lot of agencies, they functionally start as consultancies because one person starts them and they do business for the clients, and then they get more clients than they can handle, and they hire a person and go from there. But that's a really tough way. It's fully bootstrapped. It takes sometimes years to even get to 7 figures. So we're trying to kind of blow past that in the first 6 months. We're trying to basically get to where most agencies get in 2 or 3 years in 6 months, and then go from there.
How do you do that?
We take some of the operational burden off of the founder because just we've done it before, and it's once you do it one time, you can kind of apply it to multiple agencies. We basically handle and address marketing for them out of the gate, so they don't have to spend all their time, and well, it's really time. It's actually less about money, on figuring out marketing and how to get leads and how to hustle. And, the guy's cousin, maybe is a fit. Like we just kind of blow past that and drive a ton of leads out of the gate. And then, financially, we're able, because of the position we're in, to set up a situation where we can reinvest the majority of the profits back into growth. So, because like it's a different financial model than like, well, I need to take the proceeds of the first 100 grand I made and, spend it because I can't buy groceries otherwise. So we just kind of short circuit the first couple of years of like basically never being, just never being able to like get the pedals going fast enough to get momentum. We kind of blow past that.
Interesting. So it's basically like shared services or playbooks, right? So you can take care of hiring and, setting up your payroll and all that kind of crap. And then the marketing, I would assume that's really high value add marketing for the marketing firm. I like it's very meta. And then they have some kind of equity stake, I assume, like some, right. That's fascinating. So I guess my question would be, how do you judge? So the problem you're solving for is starting an agency, right? And that first couple of years. Is there, I guess the reason found many of them is because, are they limited in how much they can grow each section?
No, and it's a great question. Like, and I think it's an obvious question, which is like, why didn't you just start one agency and like do all the stuff you want to do? Because I think that small agencies that claim to be really good at 10 things are almost always fooling themselves, and the market doesn't really buy it. It also just is a really bad way to position a small company. We have, for these agencies, different ICPs, different services, different approaches, different tech stacks, right? So while like some of the shared services stuff is the same, we use the same AR process and the same payroll company and the same contracts basically. The service itself and the both delivery, the service as well as go to market is really, really contextual to the specific clients we're serving and the specific domain. And my goal for any of these agencies is, first of all, you can describe what they do and who they serve in one sentence. And after that first sentence is, and we're the best in the world at that thing. And when you're a small agency, you can't be the best in the world. It's like going into a restaurant that has some Chinese food and some burritos, but you can also get French fries and a milkshake, and they'll do your dry cleaning. Like, that food is going to be terrible. Like, going into that restaurant, that food's going to be terrible. Now, if you go to the restaurant that's like, we have the best grilled cheese sandwich in the world, you have to have the best grilled cheese sandwich you've ever eaten when you visit the city. They're going to have a line out the door because there's clarity and vision and positioning and everything else. And restaurant analogy breaks down at some point, but that's basically like what we're trying to accomplish.
So I guess then the follow-up to that would be, why not just say, hey, the biggest opportunity right now is LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever, and just focus on that one? What's the advantage of seeding many?
One, I just, this is like a personal answer. It's less about like what business model is best. I've done that already. Like, to me, this is a weird new challenge. Like, the idea of launching multiple businesses, being kind of a multi-business entrepreneur, that's just personally fascinating to me. And I've not done it before this. And so I'm really interested in that concept. Two, there's somewhat of a natural scaling limit to agencies. So can you build an agency from 0 to 10 million in revenue in 3 years? Yes. Can you build 10 agencies simultaneously from 0 to 10 million in 3 years? I think so. Can you build one agency from 0 to $100 million in 3 years? No, you cannot.
That's what I was interested in, is why is that?
Because you have to build a skill set internally of being really great at a thing. And then you have to rapidly kind of hire for and operationalize and build technology around that thing. You then also need to establish a foothold and a reputation in the market around that thing. And if you did that, and like, so what happens is, like, okay, so to be really practical about this, say at the end of year one, you've hit 2 million in revenue, right? Which is like actually pretty fast growth for an agency. Now you want to go to 5 in year 2. Well, if you take my other analogy, maybe you somehow managed to get to 5 million or 10 million in the first year, which is, maybe. Now you need to go from like 10 to 50 million or 5 to 50 million. You have a business that is fundamentally people-based, but you have no HR team. You have no real like training program of any significance built up, right? You're like a group of people doing stuff for clients. The reason SaaS companies are able to go from, 0 to 100 million in 3 years, and they do, is because when the SaaS company is $100 million company, it doesn't have 200 employees. It has like, 20 or 15. It literally is actually the scaling of of the talent side of the business that you just can't do it fast enough in like a single entity to hit that scale. So it would just blow apart. I
Businesses
think
can grow
it's never been done. Like, so I'm assuming it can't, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone will.
So I think it's that, and I think that, yes, I think it's that, because theoretically, your client set might not have to change, but it does feel like the bigger you get, the bigger the work you want to win is, because there's some economy of scale in winning work. So if you just keep winning, $50K a year jobs or whatever it is at the beginning, those are a lot of jobs to manage when you're 50 million. And that complexity is very difficult. It's not, you can't just spin up another AWS server, right? So it's that people, I think that's right. And so then you try to go after $5 million a year or $1 million a year job, whatever it is. And like, that's just like a different set of people have to do that. It's a different client. Yeah. So I can see that. It's very easy to scale to that first level and then very difficult past that.
Yeah, I mean, each step has its own weird challenges. Like, I do tend to think of agencies in kind of like 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, like revenue. I mean, it's somewhat arbitrary, but there's sort of like these chapters of growth, because once you get to that point, sort of everything breaks, and then you have to do a different version of it to get to the next, and then everything breaks again.
By the way, that's the entire premise of my company.
Oh,
So,
nice. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's basically like you like a 2 million. I call them the name of the podcast, Small Business Black Holes, and I call the people get stuck at those points because they don't know. They have to change a lot. They have to change themselves, their team, the systems, and they don't know what to do, so they just get stuck, right? Or they don't want to do what they have to do to get to the next. So you basically broke it down the exact same thing. It's funny. I like being validated.
Yeah. No, that's good. No, that question, by the way, is a fascinating one, because it does stretch my, like, well, could you just build $100 million agency in 3 years? Because I hate the idea of saying, no, that's impossible. Like, I don't like impossible. I kind of don't believe in it. But I would also look at that and go, like, I don't know how that would work, but maybe I'm just not smart enough.
Well, the other thing is you would have to recruit a different CEO, right? So I fundamentally, well, so I grew my company from about 0 to, we did like 35 million last year. And like, I could see what was happening, and I wasn't the right CEO anymore. And as it grew, it's like, all it was is like HR stuff. And like, like it just got very bureaucratic, and I'm scared. It was a people, professional services business. So it's people based. So I do think even, like and it's really difficult to go and say, I'm going to get the guy or gal that can run $100 million agency to come work at this $0 agency, right? Today. And there's just a lot there that's so different in kind.
Yeah, there is just like there's some like natural sort of like, I don't know why, but there's some natural limit of like how fast you can grow one of these businesses. By the way, most agencies growing at like 20% a year are like, consider that like pretty solid. So, we're already trying to like get into triple digit kind of annualized growth rate. And if we can do that, especially if we can do it across multiple businesses, I'll feel like that's a very solid kind of outcome.
Okay, so let's take me as a case study. All right. So I have just launched Owner Institute in January, February, something like that. So it's like a month old. And I've got this methodology for growing businesses past 2, 5, 10. And, I'm a business of a couple of people right now. There's not, and getting my first clients. So like, I just did a survey so as part of Owner Institute, we're trying to build out, like, what do you need to be doing? What are all the possible things you could be doing to grow your business, and then selecting the one that's most appropriate for you at that time, right? So say marketing. I look at the variety, and in my old company, we had a very like person-to-person sales model. So I was in government contracting, so it's very specific to that industry. So you're not doing like SEO, really. You're not doing pay-per-click ads, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't build that skill set. So now I'm looking at it. Now I'm in an industry where you have to do that. And so like, it is just overwhelming. Like how many things I could be doing. I could be on LinkedIn. I could be on TikTok. I could be here. I could be there. I could be doing SEO. I could be doing Google Ads. So like, what do you how do you manage all that as a company?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of give you the answer, and then I'll give you the framework, but the answer is like more specific to you. So, because, and here's why I know the answer, and the answer might change. If you ask me in a year, it might change, but I'm going to give you somewhat of the framework. Okay. So I always think of marketing in terms of seeking alpha, right? So the same way that the reason you would hire fund manager versus just put your money in an index fund is because you think that person, through their, skill set and the team they built and their methodology and whatever, can get you a better return than you can get just sticking it in an index fund. You take a standard kind of investment strategy, and probably a lot of what you're doing is beta, and that's okay, because you're just like low cost, get the beta, you're good. And then you do a couple things where you're going to try to get alpha, right? So to me, marketing is the same way. And the alpha opportunities change through time, and they change through industry, and they change depending on who your ICP is. So the answer is going to be different for a different company in a different moment. But what I would seek out are capital efficient alpha opportunities. that specifically resonate and work, with the other things I just mentioned. So for a B2B service company right now, those alpha opportunities are LinkedIn, in particular, creating content that resonates with your ICP on LinkedIn. You're not trying to go viral. You're not trying to become, the next, whatever big, personality. You're trying to become the go-to source of information in your specific ICP, right? You get 10 to 20,000 followers with like ICP density, you're doing great. That is capital efficient. You can absolutely get alpha in terms of like, time investment. It can punch way above its weight. It is slower on the uptake. So it's not just going to be something that's going to drive leads, month one. It's more of an upper funnel activity. But if you don't start it today, you're just going to be, a month later when you do. The second thing I would absolutely layer in is outbound messaging. So when I say messaging specifically, I mean DMs, X and LinkedIn DMs, as well as email. This is a whole sort of TED talk in and of itself. There are a lot of wrong ways to do this. There's a couple right ways. There is some really important technology that fundamentally relies on AI, but then, companies that have built sort of products on top of the foundation models that allow you to do very interesting, highly customized, highly contextual outbound messaging that is sort of the opposite of spam, right? It's not easy to do. That does have some cost because you either need to learn it and do it yourself, which is time intensive, or you need to hire someone who's already an expert. But there isn't that much infrastructure cost, and it's still capital efficient because, if you send 50,000 emails, it's not 5 times the price as 10,000, right? Like it's not like ads where you just have to pay double if you want to run double the volume. And those two right now are punching way above their weight. I think another one for B2B service companies, it's kind of like the first one where it absolutely can punch way above its weight, but it takes time and effort to get it kind of up and running, is basically building communities. Like what you're doing right now. That to me is a pillar of that, right? Newsletters, podcasts, Slack groups, virtual events, like not just kind of one-way communication, two-way communication where your community is interacting with one another. And again, it's ultimately like an upper funnel branding exercise, but you're creating this sort of owned community around your specific niche and ICP. Those are the top three.
The first one I got, second one, what are are there tools out there that are doing this? You mentioned, I guess you need someone who can use the tools correctly too, but
there's dozens of tools, but just to give, because I want to be specific, if anyone's interested in this, I would check out Instantly and I would check out Clay. Those are the two that are the most commonly used in this sort of like outbound renaissance thing that's happening right now. Those are the two kind of like, to me, non-negotiable tools. And then there's 100 others.
So you're kind of saying the whole
different
inbound revolution is now flipping to the outbound revolution, kind of.
Outbound is in this really interesting place where, outbound's always been a cat and mouse game, right? Of trying to get messages to people, and then the other providers are trying to block the messages, right? And AI has accelerated that in both directions, which sort of doesn't make sense. But what I mean by this is 95% of outbound is performing worse than it's ever performed. It's a total waste of time. If you send generic messages to 50,000 people, you're going to have 0.1% response rate or worse. Really great outbound is doing better than it's ever done. So it's created this sort of tale of two cities thing where it's the worst of times for 90% of people, and then it's the best of times for 10. And to create the best of times, you need to use the technology really well.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's interesting. So you guys are doing that second one though, it sounds like. Yeah. Are you?
Correct. Yeah. So I know it. Yeah. And part of this is going to sound like I'm being promotional, but I'm just, and what I'm really doing is eating my own cooking here, right? Like the reason we started agencies in these domains is because
Oh,
we've
have you done
seen them
one
be
in
really
in the
effective. We're
outbound
trying
one?
to
I know
capture
you
that.
did the LinkedIn one. Oh, you have. Okay.
Yeah. So that's long. Well, that's basically like, and we're, to be honest, we're struggling with like how we explain this because in a way it's outbound, but it's not just outbound because we're building the sort of systems and infrastructure as well for the client to enable this. That's why we're calling it like outbound systems. But yeah, that's basically what we're doing
So
inside
then
the
on the
second
third one, the
agency.
community one is a little, it's kind of a few things together, right? And this is something I've been looking at, like how do I get, there's levels of community, right? So like people watching your YouTube video or whatever can be community, right? But is that what you're talking about? You're actually talking about trying to get them into like a circle or something where they're interacting with each other and
I think there's a difference between an audience and a community. And to me, and I know like marketers can get really,
but it makes sense. Yeah.
but to me, the difference and the reason it's important is an audience is one way communication and community is two way. They're communicating with each other, right? So it's like, yeah, you're at the center of that, hopefully, your company or your personal brand. But like they're genuinely now getting value out of just like being in the mix with one another. And that's why I said podcast. Maybe that's actually not a great example of it, right? Because that is kind of by definition one way. But I think like events, groups, both virtual and in person. And then maybe there's also like there's obviously overlap between audience and community. There's a lot there. And there's certainly great examples of companies and entrepreneurs doing this well already. But in particular in B2B, I still think it's kind of somewhat untapped. If you find a niche, my guess is there's more demand for community than there is supply inside of that niche.
I find it very hard. I think that the first two I get, like the last one, I certainly understand the importance of it, but I think it's a lot harder to build. There's not like a tool that you go get somebody who knows how to use and then you grow really fast, or is there?
Well, there are. So one of the other agencies we're potentially building is going to be doing this. So that's part of the reason I'm thinking about it, right? And this is earlier stage, so it's more half baked. You know, I do think there are real like scalable levers to pull when it comes to building community. I don't think it's just like, let's hang out and build this thing and build it and they come and we'll see what happens. Like, there's real kind of like acquisition strategies you can use. You can use paid, you can use stuff like what I talked about with Longbow and outbound systems, but focused in a different way. Um, you look at some of the newsletter companies, they they built audiences, right? Like they didn't just like it wasn't just like viral word of mouth. Like they had a concerted funnel, like push budget, pretty scaled system to pull in new, subscribers or whatever they called them every month. I think you can do, and again, that's maybe more of an audience play, but I think you can do the same thing around community. Um, if you, especially if you can find a way, and you could probably fool yourself pretty easily here too, but if you can find a way to apply a real kind of like value to each member, you can actually start building out something that theoretically financially makes sense. In terms of
I'm
kind
right.
of user
I'm right
acquisition.
in this demographic, right? And I think my frustration is I can find people who do parts of it, but I can't find any way to coordinate the efforts together beyond my own. And I'm like the least educated person participating in the process, right? So me being the one running it is like, ugh. So like, it's like, do I need some CMO like all of a sudden to like, try to figure out?
Do you mean in general or specific to the
I
community
think
thing?
for all three of those, right? So like, all right, I'm trying to build a community and I'm doing LinkedIn and I'm doing a podcast and I'm doing a newsletter, but all the providers are different. And like they're all, and it's like I'm running around trying to deliver services to clients. I don't have a CMO, right? So how do I, in some ways you guys are setting up a model where it's like siloed, which makes sense from a like you want them to be good at the thing they're doing. But then how do you have an architecture that says, oh, all this stuff is toward this one thing, and I can measure what parts are doing what, so I know what to keep doing and not do or change. That's the part I'm finding very confusing and difficult to manage.
Yeah, I think you're finding that because it is, and there is no magic bullet to this. Marketers have been trying to figure out how you can kind of like right size attribution across channels forever, and no one's ever really been able
But
to
maybe not,
put together because the
that
problem is
that is like ultimately like what you want. But even just like coordinating the strategy, much less, yeah, that's what I find.
this is what CMOs do. The fundamental issue that you run into here is how much fixed cost are you willing to take on to make the variable cost more efficient and more effective, right? And that's the at any, smaller company when you're starting out, that kind of fundamentally, at least that's one of the big decision points is like, first of all, I think most companies under index marketing. I'm biased. I'm in this world, but that being said, just throwing a bunch of bodies and dollars at it is also not the right approach. Um, One way to think of this is, especially like in a, when you're just starting kind of startup framework, especially like I assume this like roughly bootstrap startup framework. Um, is to focus not on like peanut buttering across your efforts. If you're testing stuff, that's fine, but most companies, like, that get to, like, 10 million have a couple marketing channels that do really well, and that's fine. I'd rather have, like, 1 or 2 channels that are just crushing it versus, like, screwing around with 7, because most of them have a decent upper limit of, like, how far you can push it, right? If you do well with ads, there's no, like, upper limit to that. I mean, maybe you'll get some diminishing returns, but most of these things are pretty scalable, especially if you have a big TAM. So once you find something that works, it's not like, "Oh, good, we figured out outbound email. Yeah, let's go now add ads and let's do SEO and let's." No, like, you just keep hammering outbound email until you've literally hit a point where you have diminishing returns and it no longer makes sense to put any more resources into it. And, the only risk is you probably don't want one channel just because if something happens to it, you're too exposed. But like 2 or 3 channels, you're good. Don't worry about, you know, testing other stuff after that. Most companies that I've run into that get to like, are at 10 million, they're not even doing some of the stuff, like some of the core stuff in marketing. Some of those like beta things, they're not even there. And that's okay because they have enough levers to kind of like pull to hit their growth targets.
Would you recommend trying to use like fractional CMOs? Like, I guess you could go on Upwork and find highly experienced people to like help you find the alpha. I always find that like a dicey process too. It's like a lot of CMOs are like into like what they're into and they're not necessarily looking at your specific alpha, right? So
Yeah, I don't know if I'd hire a fractional CMO. I'd hire like a really scrappy. I think fractional people are great, but if you're going to hire a fractional person, I would hire like a fractional scrappy growth marketer. Like CMO's overstating what this is, right? Like you don't, because it's not really about strategy. And you want someone who's like, I did this for this company. You also, the other thing I think that's really important here, maybe this applies to any role, but I know it applies to this. You want someone who's done this for a company that looks exactly like yours or as close to yours as possible, because it does matter, right? Like someone who, like crushed it for a D2C cosmetics brand is going to come into your business and they're going to have no idea
go
what
after
they're
small
doing.
business
Like
owners, right?
the
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, exactly. Like the closer you can get to the domain expertise, and then someone who's basically effectively just crushed growth for a small company in the same domain, roughly, that's what I
Yeah.
look for.
So I have a client I coach now. They have a really, really effective treatment for a common ailment that people have. I'll keep them anonymous on the podcast. But it is like, I mean, they have an 85% cure rate, costs $3,000, and most people can't don't have any solution to this problem. And it's millions of people. And they're not doing any marketing. They have partnerships, right? So they do partnerships with doctors' offices, but it's slow, right? But I'm like, oh my God, this is like something people are searching on Google for. It's something people are on Facebook, Instagram, and like they don't want to spend the, they're more conservative, right? And shepherding resources, which makes sense. So they just look at it and they're like, I think a little paralyzed by like, oh, what do I have to go spend $10,000 a month on Google ads to try to do this? And it's like going to a marketing agency saying, is this going to work is kind of like asking the barber if you need a haircut, right? So yeah, how would you recommend somebody like that approach it?
So usually what makes, and everyone should be doing this, but usually what makes people like this more comfortable with marketing is you actually just figure out what the ROI is. And you figure out it's CAC and LTV, right? And so it's not rocket science, but you establish some like benchmark. And I marketers get budgets, and that's always seemed insane to me. Like it doesn't make any sense, because what they should have is a CAC to LTV ratio constraint. And then from there, you should be like, do we have enough money in the bank account? If not, can we go get debt? Because the more money you put into, if I have a vending machine and I put $1 in and it spits $3 out, I'm not going to go, oh, I only have $100 in my wallet. Whoops, I guess that's it. Like, it's a crazy way to look at the world. So first, you do need to actually do the math and make sure you're not fooling yourself and you're rigorous about it. You check it and update it all the time. But then from there, you need to establish what is our like no-brainer ratio, right? And LTV to CAC, maybe it's 7-to-1, 10-to-1, whatever you're like.
Just
this
real
is
quick
a,
for
this is
people,
a
lifetime
no-brainer.
value to customer acquisition cost. So you measure like how much does it cost me to get the customer, and then once I have them, what's their value to me? And if you can get 7-to-1, your marketing dollars, awesome, right?
Yeah, and there's some nuances to this, right? Like if you have like a tight margin business, maybe you want to do it on actual like net LTV, right? So you're like, what is your actual kind of contribution? So there's nuances to, again, don't fool yourself, because you can also fudge these numbers and make everything look rosy when it's not. But oftentimes, especially if there's clear like product market fit like this in a business, you need to establish that, and then you need to test a couple channels. For me, like in this instance, I would be testing paid and I would be testing SEO. Like performance-driven SEO. Not brand, not fluffy. Like they have a problem, they're looking for a solution, they find an article on Google and click it and read about it, and then they click into your website. So those are the two channels like I'd be looking at here, and then maybe like organic social and paid social too, probably. Actually, let me say this. I would do sort of traditional paid social, SEO, and organic social are the ones I would look at. And then again, like what matters is the math. What matters is the numbers. Oh, like Facebook ads for some reason just crush. Great. Just do Facebook ads until you literally hit a point at which there's diminishing returns, which there will always be that point, but it could be like after you've driven 100 million of business, so yeah. And then just keep spending money on it.
So can we start a podcast where we just have people write in and ask like what their marketing alpha is about? Can we?
And I just yell at them for not spending enough
Yeah, I
money on
like
marketing.
it. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's real. I mean, great lessons here. It's like just really understanding, I think you're probably what I take from it is there's some broad things that are going to apply to B2B versus B2C, right? Or direct to consumer, blah, blah, blah. So that, like you mentioned, more SEO and, and paid advertising versus like, with me, it might be more like the outreach or the cold outreach kind of thing, or, a couple other things. So there's going to be like differences in category there. But then once you get down to that, you say, all right, now let me go find somebody on Upwork or something like that, right? Or if you can ask around who's actually done this for real with somebody just like me, and go try to work with that person. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. The other thing I would say though, and again, this may just be like generic advice actually, but if you do a half-assed test and get half-assed results, you learn nothing. So it like again, instead of peanut buttering, we got a guy, he's kind of okay at SEO, and we have some other guys, we're going to spend $500 on ads, like which doesn't, you can't, there's not enough scale to learn from that. Like, don't do that across 10 channels. If you don't have budget, pick like 3 that you're the most interested in, and then give it like a real shot. Give it 3 months, right? Put some budget behind it. Find a person or an agency who you think is really good, and at least do a proper test. And if it doesn't work, you at least now definitively know this is somehow.
And what do you, I mean, I know it's going to depend on what tactic we're undertaking, but should people, when you say real budget for a small company, are you talking 3 to 5 grand? You talking 10 grand?
Like, so if we take like a 7-figure business, right? And this is very kind of generic. Yeah, I would say per channel, between the cost of the channel itself and the resources required to do it, I would say 5 to 10 grand per month per channel for 3 months should tell you quite a bit, right? So all in, that's like 90 grand, I guess, on the upper end. You're going to learn quite a bit. If you're like, want the layer like you talked about of like the sort of growth marketer or like CMO style person to help direct that, then that's also totally fine. That's going to be incremental. I think really good Upwork people are fine. Contractors are fine. Scrappy domain focused agencies, I think are a good option too, right? There's like 100,000 agencies in the US, which is insane. Most of them are like, they're okay. There's some that are really good. To me, the ones to look for are, ones that are really specific about what they do. They're like focused. They're like, we're the best in the world at this thing. They have clients that look like you, that have had wins. They have case studies. If you can get a reference, do that. Hopefully at that point, smaller agency, you can talk to the founder, one of the founders, et cetera, get a good feeling about it. Like, and don't sign up for a 12-month contract. Like, at least sign up for a 12-month contract. Make sure you have like a 3-month out to make sure they're,
I find that the
that's
agencies
what I
are
would do.
doing themselves a disservice by trying to peanut butter what they're talking about, right? They're not, it's like if you come in and you say like, look, I help, people put together B2B communities in this way for these kind of industries, like, boom, I would be on that like white on rice, but it's just so like generalized. And you go onto the website, it sounds like I haven't spent a lot of money and not get anything. That's basically
Well,
what it
yeah,
sounds
because
like.
like if a company has 20 employees and they're saying they're great at 12 things, it's like, wait, so you don't even have like one person dedicated to each domain, like at your company? I mean, it's like, people aren't stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So
That's awesome. Cool. Well, if people want to reach out and learn more or go to one of your agencies, what's the best way?
yeah, so my kind of personal home base is LinkedIn. So you can search me there. My last name is pretty unique. And then if you're interested in the venture studio, it's VantaFive.com.
VantaFive.com. And John, it's John Orson, right? Or
Correct.
I got that right. Okay. I wasn't looking at the thing.
That was good. I'm surprised. I can barely spell it sometimes. So
I know. Oh, that's great. Well, John, thanks so much. Great lessons. I love it. And you shed a little light on the dark world of marketing. I like it.
I'm glad. Thanks for having me on, Ellen.
You've been listening to the Small Business Black Holes podcast with Alan Pence. For more insights on mastering the new game, follow @apent, that's APENTZ on X, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, in today's world, you don't follow the rules, you write them.